Welcome to the Early Founder Podcast. My name is Philip, and I run a high school startup incubator called Launchpad, where I lead high schoolers nationwide through the startup process with the help of industry veterans. Along this journey, I was curious to see what makes an entrepreneur successful, what traits, experiences, and habits they possess, especially while they're young. So that's why I made the Early Founder, to have conversations with those who have made massive breakthroughs at a young age and to share their experiences with other aspiring founders. Today's guest is Ethan Hilton, an 18-year-old founder automating law firms with AI. At 16, he built LegalTech, a legal lead startup that scaled to $1.5 million in revenue and a team of 10. After enrolling at Carnegie Mellon to study AI in business, Ethan dropped out to launch Caseflood.ai, a startup replacing the support staff for law firms. Ethan's approach led to Y Combinator's Winter 2025 batch, making him the third youngest founder to ever be funded by YC. And he just recently raised $3.1 million for the company. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Philip. Dude, it's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So my first question is, where does your company stand today, and what milestone are you most proud of so far?
I mean, it's really early, right? Like we launched about like two and a half months ago, 3 months ago. And we went basically from like $0 to $100,000 in less than a month. And then we just raised like our seed round. But right now we're in the process, which it's one of the most difficult, but one of the most fun processes, which is building repeatable revenue. So once you kind of validate the thing that you're building is something that people want and actually works, then the process from getting like a seed to Series A stage is going to be actually building repeatable revenue processes in which you can put money in, you get money out. And that's the kind of thing that we're working on right now.
I see. Can you walk me through like what a typical day in the life looks like as, the founder and CEO of Caseflood?
Yeah, fair enough. I think a lot of the highest leverage things that I do is going to conferences at this point in time. I think any early stage founder that's like super, super huge. And usually the week leading up to the conference is just prep. Whether that's like the entire day, I'm just doing a whole bunch of outreach to try and schedule meetings with people that are at the conferences, building out a whole bunch of things to do at the conferences. Like the conference I just went to, I printed out like a few hundred posters and I put them inside like the stalls of bathrooms and I put them above urinals. And I just made a whole bunch of copy, made like a custom landing page, all that stuff, just so I didn't have to spend like the $30,000 to actually advertise at the conference. And, just kind of like scoping out people, stuff like that. So that's typically what it looks like leading up to a conference. Right now, I just got back. So I'm in the process right now of following up with a ton of people, booking sales calls, going through sales calls, closing deals, moving things forward, sending out letters of engagement. And then like my last half of the day is almost all product, making sure that what we're building is good, going through like logs, going through a lot of the stats and analytics of like what actual user engagement looks like, etc.
I see. So where are you based right now?
We're all based in sunny San Francisco right now. We have a 120-year-old house that we're all living out of, and it's pretty sweet. It was super cheap though, and so when it rains, the ceilings do cry. But that's about it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So let's rewind a little bit to the early spark. Can you tell me about your first experiences with entrepreneurship?
I mean, you've probably done this with a lot of people and heard the same things, but it's like, super, super early. It was just kind of stuff that I really love to do. Third grade, I used to do like a whole bunch of different little ventures where I would like hustle money out of kids. I'd do like rainbow loom education classes, and I would like rent out my rainbow loom shit to other people. I would do like cooking classes for the kids at like during lunch. And then like, I kind of did a whole bunch of like Pokemon card things. I did like design, graphic design, video editing, and it just kind of like kept on getting more and more interesting as I got older. But I think that it's always just kind of been there in terms of just like liking to make things happen. I was probably a bit of a troublemaker. Actually, I was definitely a troublemaker for like my entire early childhood. And I find that to be like the case with almost every single exceptional founder I meet out here as well. And so like the stereotypical like rebellious type is definitely something that like I'd probably subscribe to.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of the founders that I've talked to, have had like similar attributes as what you just mentioned.
You talked to Eric, right?
Yeah, Eric, like he's a massive shit poster, right?
Yeah.
They all do things like that, which is really cool. Can you walk me through, how you ended up making LegalTech? That was your first like real privy into entrepreneurship. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever people start out like with startups, they all start out with like a couple really bad ideas. And LegalTech was mine. I know it did all right. But like it was kind of like my second real thing in entrepreneurship. I don't know if you would count the first one. I did an e-commerce, like a set of stores. And I kind of learned how to run ads, SEO. I learned how to build like websites, how to fulfill logistics, distribution, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then after that, I was like, all right, I got to stop fucking around and I got to make something real. And so I decided to make this company. And the way I landed on LegalTech was basically like a legal leads distribution platform. But the way I landed on it was like my town of Evansville, Indiana. There were about 100,000 people. And realistically, there's only like two industries there, and it was law and hospitals. That was basically all there was in the town. And I really didn't want to serve healthcare, so I was like, we'll serve something for law firms. And so I kind of just went to the lawyers that I knew, and I asked them, like, what was your biggest problem? Like, what's your biggest problem? And they kind of just jokingly told me, well, I could use more leads. I was like, got it, on it. And so I made something to solve not a real problem. I mean, sure, it solves a problem for the lawyers, but like for the customers, it didn't really, which was like, and I actually find a lot of people come with this exact same sort of tar pit idea. So this is a PSA, but the idea of like, man, like people don't know which lawyer to trust when they need a lawyer. What if we made a website that let people go find a lawyer? And a lot of people do sort of a similar thing where it's like, people, whenever they're looking for construction work or like, home service projects, or whenever they're looking for, XYZ services industry, they don't know where to look. So what if we created the platform that lets you find them? Those sort of two-sided marketplaces are always very, very, very difficult to get off the ground and build and scale. They have high velocity once you do. But anyways, that's what we did. And it was basically like a 1-to-1, like ad spend versus revenue we got out of it. It was very, very difficult to scale, but it taught me a lot of things early on about actually like building and growing a company.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably like an amazing introduction. It was basically like your first experience where you actually started generating revenue, which I think is super important, right?
Right, for sure.
This is kind of like a side tangent, but I first found out about you from your YouTube channel. Can you tell me why you initially decided to start posting, and like if that's leading to anything right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it leads to right now is a whole bunch of high school kids asking me to review their college application. Like they reach out to me on LinkedIn, on email. I don't even know how they find it. And I get probably like 4 or 5 of those a day.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite a few. But I started it realistically just because I knew that if I got into a whole bunch of really good colleges and I put a video out there, they almost always go viral. The college admissions videos almost always go viral. So I thought I could just make like a well-edited one, and it would go pretty well. And then if I wanted to start a college consultancy agency, I could just have like link in bio and churn out some good revenue, some side money once I was in college. And so that's literally why I documented the whole thing. And I totally recommend doing this. Like if you think you're going to get into some great colleges and you want to make some side money when you're in your undergrad, like totally record the whole thing, make a great video out of it. And then like start your own little college consultancy where you like, I don't know, bill like $200 an hour for your time. But that was basically it. It ended up doing a lot better than I thought it would. I think like one of them is at like 200,000 views. The other one's like maybe like 80,000. Those numbers could be completely wrong at this point. But it was basically like a brand new account, and it was fun. I get recognized for it, and I never expected that would happen.
Yeah. I know like there's this whole, I don't know how to describe it. Like there's this whole like influencer type that's like college influencers, right? And I think you've accidentally become one of them. So it's pretty cool.
That's miserable. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I get people telling me that I'm like a LinkedIn influencer, and that really hurts. I put out posts on LinkedIn, and they do all right as well. And so I don't want to be an influencer. That's like never the goal. But it's kind of cool to get recognized whenever I'm like at the gym or like whenever I meet a lawyer and their kid knows me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on from there. So, after you made those videos, you went on to Carnegie Mellon, right? And then can you tell me what was the inflection point between there and making Caseflood? Like, tell me about what led to the building of that.
I think the thing was like, even when I was going to go to college, I told my mom. So my parents, both went to MIT, both got PhDs, right? Very sort of traditional academia background. They definitely wanted me to go to college. I used to think I wouldn't even go to college, but I told my parents before I went to college, like, I am going to try and drop out. And my mom hated that. My mom absolutely hated that. But I said, like, my goal in college is to drop out. And like PSA, like that should not be your goal. I just really, really, like, I kind of looked at like what the future would look like, which was like, if I actually did the full 4 years at college, then I would get a job. And then, that's kind of it, right? You get a job and you kind of like keep on upskilling and leveling up your jobs. And to me, that wasn't something I really wanted to do. I love the quote, I don't know where it's from, but the idea that the one thing whenever you're on your deathbed that you don't want to have is regrets. And like, I've seen a lot of people that have like the stereotypical, like super successful, right? They went to great schools, they got great jobs, high paying, they got a family, good house, all that stuff. And it's kind of just miserable. It's kind of just like plateau of a lifestyle. So I was really looking for something that would let me drop out. And I kind of tossed in there to my parents, was like, listen, if I get into YC, like, can I drop out? And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever, right? Throwaway comment. I'm 16. And so I started Caseflood, and then we went from like basically nothing to actual having like real customers, where I managed to close like actual law firms as like a 17-year-old. NYC thought that was sick, so we got accepted, and then I got to drop out, and that was great.
It's amazing. Yeah, what a story. At this stage, you mentioned your parents, but were there any did you have any like role models or like people you looked up to that especially inspired you or encouraged you to maybe even drop out during that time?
I think like there's a lot of people that I met that encouraged me to drop out at the time. There's this guy, Eliam Medina. Do you know Eliam?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Eliam, I'm actually going to see him today. But he's this just crazy dude that he made it big with his company. He did YC a while back. He made it big with his company called Willing. And at a certain point, I don't know if I can share that statistic, never mind. But they did really well. And now he is sort of set on a journey of helping a whole bunch of young people drop out of college and create companies. He's a crazy guy. I love him. And he visited Carnegie Mellon. And like the story of how he visited Carnegie Mellon was like somebody in my club. They reached out to him and said like, hey, your background's super cool. Like, could you like talk at our upcoming like this Wednesday's meeting? And everybody else does a Zoom meeting, but he said, sure, cool. Where is it? We're like Carnegie Mellon. He said, awesome. See you Wednesday. And he flew out on like a 2-day notice. And he spent the entire day talking to all of us. And so I sat down and I talked to him. And basically like, I just heard so many stories. Like it's so common actually, for people to just, smart people to drop out, find a problem, build a solution, and then do well. Do well as in like at least make like $1 million, $2 million a year take home for themselves. And that's not something that's ever going to be publicized because it's like, that's not like a crazy success breakout story. But like, he kind of confirmed my suspicions, which is like, there's no secret voodoo magic that means that you have to get lucky. It's quite simple. And he actually got like, he kind of got like upset this one time because I asked him like, if it doesn't work out with YC, like, would I still need to go back to college? Could I get a job with like, and he was like, you don't understand. Like, you found a problem, build a solution, got people to pay for it. That's it. That's the secret to money. There's nothing else. Colleges, jobs, credentials, they're all like fake. He said they're like just ways for incompetent people to differentiate themselves. And he said like the secret to money is purely just building a solution to a problem and getting people to pay you money for it. And that was it. And that was a very sort of first principles way of thinking about like the world. And once he had hammered that home, I realized like, yeah. So I'm technically on a leave of absence, but I'm a self-proclaimed dropout because I will not be going back to college.
I see.
Yeah.
So that one semester there, that's it.
Basically, I had like a 2.0 GPA. It was. I didn't go to any classes. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people, anyways, they say that college is for the people, right? It's for like the people and like those opportunities. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, moving on to more into building the venture. So once you had a clear idea for Caseflood, right? What were the very first steps you took off? What were the very first steps you took to get things off the ground? Get your first customers, validate the idea. How did that go?
Yeah, I think you shouldn't start with an idea. You should start with a customer and then work from there. A lot of people actually ask me, like, how do I start like a company? And I think the framework is super, super simple. Like finding a great killer idea. You like find an ICP, like a core avatar of person that you want to serve. So for me, it was law firms, small law firms specifically. And then I reached out to as many of those people as I possibly could. And I just hopped in a call with them and I asked them about as many problems as I could. Basically just like go through their entire day-to-day and figure out like what do they not like, what's really inefficient, like throughout all the processes, all the things, and try and find like some of the biggest pain points. And I think this is like, I did this over like 3 weeks. I talked to maybe like 80 lawyers. And I found one that I thought was like a really, really good problem to solve. And so me and my co-founder, we brainstormed like 4 different ways to solve it. And we ended up landing on one that we wanted to commit to. And then we went back to the same people that we know have these exact problems. And I said, hey, we built this thing. Would you be willing to try it out for $300 a month? Just a super low price just to get in. Mm-hmm. And, a lot said no because I sounded like a stupid idiot kid that had nothing, no real credentials. But a few people said yes. And that ended up getting enough for us to get data, understanding of like exactly all the things we didn't understand about the problem, and actually have real users. And so I think a lot of people, they struggle to get their first few users, which shouldn't be the case. And I've actually wrote about this in a post, which is like, I think Paul Graham said this to me, which is like, your first few users should be extremely easy to get because they should feel like they're getting a great deal. In almost no other situations can you pay a kid like can you pay $100 a month to have like a team of 3 Stanford kids almost working for you full time. And that's exactly what's happening, right? Like you're paying like $300 a month to have like 3 really, really intelligent, high power like kids that would probably be getting paid, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 each, for like an actual software engineering job out of college, to be working on your little tiny problems for you. And so like, if you know what you're doing and understand the sort of situation and context, like it should actually be quite an easy sell. And so, I don't know if you've gone through like the actual process of like getting your first few users. But like once you switch it to that, like people understand like yeah, sure, I'll throw you a bone. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. How long did it take to build the initial MVP?
It shouldn't take more than like 2 weeks. Like I think it obviously depends on the industry and depends on like the type of company. Because like nowadays you can't just have like a really shit MVP and expect people to actually use it. Like your MVP needs to be a little more than just minimum. But yeah, like 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. I think that's actually something that a lot of people get caught up on. They think like, oh, I have to have a finished product before I start talking to people, right? That's what a lot of like younger founders who haven't really been exposed to anything yet. That's what they kind of view entrepreneurship to be like, right? You need a finished product. But I think every founder I've talked to, they start with like an MVP, like a rough version basically, and they're able to get customers with that and then expand after.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you walk me through the process of applying to YC and like why I mean, you've already touched on this already, but like why specifically you decided to apply?
I actually didn't think I was ever going to apply to YC, which is the weird part. I thought to myself, like, I would just be one of those sort of entrepreneurs where like I can create a tech company, all that stuff, bootstrap it, not really raise any VC money. And I would just sort of live a comfortable, like tech entrepreneur middle class, which like Michael Seibel like labels as like $10 million a year or less. And like that would be happy for me. But I was at this like networking event randomly at a CMU thing, and some guy that wasn't even CMU, he was asking me what I did, like what I'm doing. I told him what I'm doing, and he told me like, dude, you have to apply to YC. And I was like, no, like I'm not good enough. Like I don't have the crazy credentials, right? I'm like 18 years old. Like, you know, the team is just kind of like whatever. Like I don't think I'm gonna get in. He's like, dude, like apply. Like you. He told me he's watched like 1,000 hours of YC application videos, which I don't know if that's true or not. But he said that like I'd at least get a fighting chance. I was like, no, like I don't know. I don't think it's really worth it. He said, listen, if I come back here in a month and you haven't applied, I will be so upset. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll apply. And so like once I set my mind to the fact that like I was going to try my hardest to get into YC, I did like basically 18 hours a day of like YC application research and like understanding exactly how this looks, because there's a lot of things you can do that increase your chances significantly. And so like I could go super deep into that, but like basically like we ended up doing, they say don't do any practice or mock interviews. We did like almost 20 mock interviews within like, they tell you have an interview like 2 days, 3 days before you have it. And so I just did a ton of outreach, got as many YC founders as possible to give me a mock interview within that time. And it was, I don't know, it was just a really, I went really hard to make sure we got in, because my grades were failing. I had like a 2.0 GPA, and I was like, if I don't get in, actually, this is going to be very bad. So
I see. Yeah. I guess my next question is, what was your experience throughout YC? What was like the most meaningful talk you went to? Like in summary, like what did you get out of it? Right? Was it worth it?
Yeah, yes, it's worth it. I think if you're like under the age of 25, it's always going to be worth it with no exceptions. And I think like I still know like some of my best friends in YC, like they raised over $100 million for their previous company, and they still did YC. Like in this batch, I there's so many intangibles that makes YC really, really great. Like a few of them are like if you're servicing software engineers, startups, or VCs, like if you just do YC, they get you all your users for you without you having to do anything. So that's like one thing, which is like, YC has 2 million followers on LinkedIn, 2 million followers on Twitter, and all these channels in which like YC, the name itself, carries a ton of weight. So I know a lot of these people where they have like really shitty startup ideas in our batch, but it's like some sort of dev tools, whatever. They post it on YC, and then within like maybe 2 days, they have $500,000 in AR booked. And like, YC just does that for you. But I think that the best thing is like the people you get connected into. And that's so cliche, but like genuinely, it's a lonely path to be a founder. And like YC just plugs you into the very top echelon of people. Like these people are just so incredible, right? You meet Olympians, you meet people that are like literally almost every single person I've talked to, they competed at some national, international level at the highest level, in something, right? Everybody here is just an exceptionalist. And it's just like such a great, like every Saturday, me and a group of like YC founders, we go to the Bay Area and jump in, and do a cold plunge, right? And it's like fucking freezing. And like all these guys are like running really sick companies. And it's just like, I don't know, the people you meet and the people you get to be around with are like the exact people that like, I think you too, Philip, would just love to be surrounded by. Mm-hmm.
Definitely, like 100%.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you applied to YC, did you do it with a team? Did you have like your co-founders already set up, or did that happen like later on once you're already in the batch?
Well, what do you mean?
Like, did you know your co-founders prior to entering the batch? Did you apply with them?
You apply with your co-founders. And so I only had one co-founder at the time that I like set my mind on applying. His name is Tolan. He's 18 years old as well. But right before we applied, we got a third co-founder. His name is Aishman, and he's like 28 years old, and he was like C-suite at a unicorn company in India, and he had his master's in AI from CMU. And so like we did it last second because once again, I was optimizing heavily for getting into YC, but like having him on the team has been great. But yeah, you have to have a team before you get into YC. But I've seen a lot of teams like break up during YC, in which like people start out as like, a larger team and it goes smaller, which I think is a good thing. Like I think every time like a team breaks up and there's like less people remaining in YC, like that's been a good thing. That's been a positive thing.
Yeah, being more lean is better. How did you get Aishman to join your team? If he had this position at this startup, like what like how did you convince him?
What happened was, so he did that like a few years ago, and then he went to America in 2023 to get his master's, and so he had just graduated in 2024, and Toll and I were working on this Caseflood thing on the side, right? And we came up on this technical issue that we really just couldn't solve. And so what I did was like, we needed an expert. So I went over to the Carnegie Mellon Computer Science building, and I put up a poster saying, $1,000 if you can solve this technical problem. And Aishman, who had already graduated the year before, he had came back because he was giving a talk, I think. Like he was like a guest lecturer. And he went through the wrong building. Out of pure serendipity, he saw my little poster. And I'm sure he thought this was just free money. So he put in a submission. And out of the many that we got, his was by far the best. And so we asked him if he could help us like implement it for 1 week. And by the end of the week, he said yes. And by the end of the week, we weren't quite done. And so, I went to him and was like, Aishman, it was a real pleasure working with you. Like, thank you so much. Have a great life. And he was like, I actually wanted to talk to you about this. Is it possible for me to stay on for a few more days just to finish out the project? And I was like, we would love to, but like, we can't pay you anymore. I'm sorry. And he was like, oh, no. Like, that's not an issue. I just can't not see a project through. And we're like, sure. So he stayed on for a few more days, and we worked so well that by the end of it, I basically convinced him to ditch his Google job and join us full time.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's pure serendipity. Like, you can't explain it any other way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm very fortunate for that.
That's awesome. So, okay. So you went through the winter batch, and you ended up at demo day, right? Can you walk me through your approach to securing funding and your method of like projecting your vision, how you got investors to back that?
There are a few YC secrets that I need to make sure I don't share here.
Okay, yeah.
But one of the things that are really, really important to closing. So we actually, I think out of the entire batch, we were one of, if not the first company to close our seed round in the entire batch. We did about $3 million in 72 hours. And the way we did that was, there's a few things I can share, which is we front loaded a lot of the, so basically the way this looks like is you have a fundraising period. You want to set super, super like small. So for me, it was like the week before demo day. And so I basically wanted to have all like 60 of my investor meetings compiled into 3 days. And so on Monday, I would have investor meetings back to back. There was literally, I think, a total of 3 15-minute breaks the entire day from 8 a.m. till 1 a.m. On Monday. And so I literally just took back to back investor meetings. And I started out intentionally by choosing the ones that would be quick checks, ones that I knew either because they had like my LinkedIn posts or they had told me explicitly, like, the second you start raising, I want to be your first meeting, like quick checks. And so what happened was I would go into my first meeting and I would close a check right there. And I would go into my second meeting and I would tell them the previous one, like 10 minutes ago, just closed a check. I have 60 more in the next, 24 hours. And then that one would result in a check. And I would just keep on doing this. And we created crazy momentum where in the first day we closed like 1.5 million. And so we got some really sick people on the cap table. And FOMO is very real. But if you don't have the benefit of YC, I would still recommend doing the exact same thing, which is finding some arbitrary date, packing a ton of investor meetings in there, right? Like this had been planning for like 3 months in advance, where like people that was reaching out to me in December, I'd be putting them on my calendar in March. And so basically by then I had just this super packed calendar, and then telling them like every single check was closing, and then just telling them like who else we had that we were going to be talking to in the next few days, and saying like, listen, like they'd say like, okay, awesome, yeah, we're really fast, like our process is like, we'll let you know by the end of the week if we can give you a check. We'll probably do one more meeting, and I'll tell them, guys, I'm sorry, I can't do by the end of this week. You guys are really cool, but we're probably going to close around in the next 24 hours. So if you guys can't accommodate, that's okay. They're like, no, we'll figure out a way, right? And that's absolutely how you have to do it in order to have a really successful fundraise. So yeah, that's kind of what we did.
How do you know which investors you wanted to take on and which ones you didn't? Because I'm sure you had like the 60 people. Who did you choose to? Yeah.
The YC advice, at least the advice Jared gave me, it might be different if you're like higher level. But for me, like I'm a new entrepreneur. I don't really have a crazy background. Like I didn't raise 100 million in my previous company. And so he said, basically, take every single check up until you've hit your goal. So for us, our goal was $2 million raised. He said after that, you can get sort of judicious. You can raise the valuation. You can do all these things. And so, yeah, in the beginning, like I would pretend like you're being picky, but I would just take every single check. Maybe respond to them like a day later and say that you're willing to take their check. But as it got later, like, and the people had to start pitching me on why I should take their money. Honestly, the conventional wisdom here is just like, if they seem like good people, like just genuinely good people that won't screw you over, they won't try and do any weird stuff. They won't really reach out to you even. Like you want an investor that gives you money and then fucks off and never talks to you again. And so basically it just started getting down to like if they can give me a great valuation, and maybe if they can provide some X factor thing. But like Ankit said, he's a group partner at YC. He said VCs are great at 10 things. There's 10 things you should be rating them on. And the first 1 through 8 most important things is money. 9 is they don't mess you up. They don't like just absolutely ruin you. And then 10 is like any extra superfluous things they can give you. But, more realistically, it's always just going to be the fact that like they can just give you a good deal with a good valuation and they won't fuck with you.
For sure. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, you're 18 years old, you're doing all of this at what most people would say is a very like young age, right? So have you dealt with any difficulties relating to your age, maybe from older people, clients, partners? Like, has there been any skepticism or doubt?
I think I get it, but not too often. And I think a lot of it is demeanor. Like I know people that are older than me, like 24, 26, that they go to the sort of same types of like conferences or they have the same sort of conversations. And I think then age becomes a question. But I think like the fear with age is always just experience and competence. And so a lot of the times like there's just a really low perceived competence and low perceived experience because you're younger. And it's probably perceived because it's true. And so like I won't pretend like I'm super experienced or super competent in the things that like these other people are. But like it hasn't come up enough to the point where it's been an issue. I think the biggest issue is hiring, getting really good founding engineers, getting people that are maybe like ex-CTO of another company that went from 0 to like 100 million, right? Like that's going to be very tough because if their career is going like this, they have great background, great job prospects, why would they work for an 18-year-old? And like you can certainly make a case, but it's a little more difficult for sure. Because you seem much more risky as an employee to an employer sort of scenario. But like, I think VCs actually get excited about the fact that I'm young, and this is going to be interesting. Jared told me this I think the same night I talked to him about you, which was I asked him like why, like what's like the hook for like a young person like me, like what makes me not like a scary investment to a VC? And he said, here's the thing. You know what most of these 30-year-olds that get in YC were doing at age 30? They were PM at Apple or Google, right? But you know what Mark Zuckerberg was doing when he was 30? He was running a $100 billion company. And so when he was 18, he looked a lot more like you in terms that he'd just started a company, he was raising a little bit of money, and it was, he had all these like interesting things in his background already that you could maybe chart out some success. But they're looking to find like a person where they're going to have exponential growth. And if you're 30, like you already had all this time and experience and like chances to prove yourself. And so if you kind of stagnated or it was kind of like a linear sort of growth for, decades of your life, there's not a lot of room for imagination in terms of like what's going to happen next. In terms of like when you're 18 and you already did like, you got patents when you were younger, you started a company that did really well, you went to a great school, but you want to drop out in like your first semester. And like, I don't know, just all these interesting things behind you. A VC's like their imagination can run wild. So I think actually VCs are like the easiest when it comes to like trying to convince them that your age is not a bad thing. And then customers don't care as long as you just give them something that's good. They'll be happy.
That's awesome. I think that's the whole purpose of this podcast, right? It's to demonstrate that young people can do it, and that in fact they're almost like more likely to, I wouldn't say more likely to succeed, but they have like, by starting early, they have a higher potential for growth, right? They can grow more exponentially, as you said.
Absolutely.
My follow-up question from that is like, has there ever been a point where you've had to significantly pivot or change your idea? I feel like that's something that a lot of founders have to go through. Has that ever been like something you've had to go through?
Not too rigorously, not a significant one. We've definitely gone through a lot of phases in which like we've refined the exact idea that we're doing and like why we're doing it. There's been a lot of times where we thought we wanted to pivot out. And that's going to happen every single time in which like you have an idea that seems really exciting, you start doing it, you have some customers, and you realize all the disgusting problems with the specific idea and the specific company. And they think that pivoting into something else is going to yield them a better company with, less of these problems. And it very well might. But like I would say the majority of the time, like I said, the YC advice here is like the only reason you should ever pivot is if you hit a local maximum in which like you hit $1 million in ARR with your bad idea. And then you can realize it's a bad idea because you actually figured it out, right? And so, no, we haven't done that yet with this company.
I see, yeah. How important do you think, like network, like you mentioned the cold plunges, right? How important has it been to build a community around you and like network with the people around you? And how helpful has that been when making your startup?
I think it's so awesome. Like imagine a world in which like now, right now, I only know people that are growing companies and are in like my exact same stage. There's this part, everybody's always hosting like parties, like functions at their place, just like hangouts and stuff like that. And every single time you talk to any of them, like they're all living the exact same experience in which like they are trying to get to $1 million in ARR. They're dealing with hiring, they're dealing with managing cap table. They're dealing with all these sort of like nitty gritty things that I'm dealing with. And it becomes the norm, right? And then like whenever everybody else starts doing really well, like it's a real driver. You don't want to be left in the dust. And so, you fall to the level of the people around you. And whenever your community is just so exceptional, right? Like all these people are super exceptional. It creates this great environment in which there is no room for anything but absolute exceptionalism. And I think that's like one of the great things about YC and just one of the great things about like just communities in general.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've already reached a point where things have felt like you've made it in a way? Like, does that question make sense? Like, obviously you still have a lot of places to go, right? But have you felt like you've reached that point?
I think like there are days where I feel really happy and really proud of like, and I remember like, wow, like I can't believe I'm here. But if I zoom out, like I've done nothing. I've built no real enterprise value. I haven't changed real lives. And like the scale in which I've done things is a blip. And I think like I've seen what like actual made it looks like enough, to where like I feel like I've done effectively nothing. And I you know, in Silicon Valley, you do a lot of comparison, but I think if you raise some money and have even like $1 million in ARR, you've made a company that's at the same scale that thousands of other people, tens of thousands of other people, are at right now. And it's not that crazy. I think it's kind of cool that I'm 18 and doing this, but like, you know, I see what's to come, and I see how uncertain everything is. And it's like, if I can get over that, then I'll have made it. But yeah.
That's awesome. I'm sure like law is a relatively competitive, like, and also pretty traditional industry, right? So what has been your secret to, I don't know, like making an impact and differentiating your offering?
Well, there's a saying for people that like work in like selling to law, which is if you can sell in law, you can sell anywhere. The idea that like these people are professional skeptics, so selling to them is very, very tough. It makes you get really crafty, and I don't know if differentiation is a big thing, because I honestly think differentiation is like never something that someone really has to focus on. Or it shouldn't be something that you're having to focus on, because you should just have a product that's just solving a problem in like a novel way, and like that's it. That's kind of like a Peter Thiel type thought, but you do a lot of things that are really crafty just to get people to close. Like if you look on our website, and I actually shouldn't, I don't know how much I should share of this. There's probably no lawyers watching, but there's like, it says on our pricing page, like there's a $3,000, it has all our prices and then a $3,000 onboarding fee. That onboarding fee is not real. Basically almost one person ever has paid that. I just use it as a bargaining chip.
I've seen like use the voucher code to get rid
yes,
of
yes, exactly. Wait, where'd you see that?
on your website. I was like looking at it.
Yeah. And so basically, like, I just do these things. So I'm like, listen, like, so you're saying for you, you're not sure about the price. Like, yeah, like, I think all this is really cool and all that stuff, but like, I'm trying to think like the onboarding fee is quite a bit, and so I have to talk about this. And I was like, okay, so if price was not an option or not an issue, like, would you close today? And they'd be like, I mean, yeah, sure. Like, if the price was an issue, then yeah, I'd close today. Like, oh, sick. Okay. Okay, how about this? Now, don't tell anybody, but if I were to waive the $3,000 onboarding fee for you, would you close right now? They're like, oh, absolutely. I go, sick. Okay. Well, in that case, and then, you know, don't tell your friends or whatever. And then you can ask something from them so they feel like they did you a favor. You know, just like there's like a variety of little shifty things you can do that you have to do so that these customers feel like they got the best of you, because lawyers love to win. They love to win every interaction regardless of what it is. So that's like some of the things you do. But I think everybody has their own sort of things that they figure out to sell into an antiquated industry.
Yeah, wait, that's so cool. I really, really like that actually. Okay, so moving into like looking ahead, right? Where do you see yourself heading in the next few years?
Next few years is quite simple, actually. Like after you raise a seed round, it's the path is kind of simple as long as you have like a product that you know people want. And it's the same for almost every single business, which is like you get to the point in which you are just distributing your product to more and more people. You grow the team around you to help like manage that sort of scale. You put more money into growing. You put more efforts into growing. You make the product better. You diversify the amount of things you can sell to, right? So like we have basically one product right now. You start adding on more things that you kind of upsell down the line in terms of like, once we solve this problem for you, you're going to need this problem solved for you, etc. And then you eventually just become a $100 million company, etc. And you're saying kind of like, do I plan on selling it? Like, do I plan on like staying on? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
What they tell us at YC is that no one is coming to save you. You either IPO or your company dies. Like 1%, if not less than 1% of YC companies end up getting acquired. And so you either get rich in secondary financing, IPO, or you die. And so I have to make it there. So basically the goal is to just grow this thing to be as big as possible, and then get some liquidity out of it.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, along this path, have you set any personal goals for yourself, you know, to make sure you're you're still doing well, like emotionally, mentally, and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep going to the gym. There's a million reasons why you could say like you don't have time to work out, you don't have time to exercise, etc. Because like they're all valid. But at the end of the day, like making this sort of seemingly disproportionate like hour and a half to work out almost every day, like that does so much for you. Or like even just hanging out with like friends, going to do like random shit, like that is so good on the psyche. And I'm not a big fan or like a big believer in like, like balance and all that stuff, because naturally like, I don't think you can afford balance whenever you're building a company. Because like there's a competitor out there that just doesn't care and they're not going to have balance. But like, I think the two things of like having a close-knit friend group that you can like hang out with pretty consistently and getting some exercise in, tending to your body is both really, really important.
100%. Yeah. Okay, final section. We're nearing the end, which is advice in closing, right? So if you could talk to a teenager right now who wants to make a startup tomorrow, what is one piece of advice you'd give them?
I would totally say just start. I think high school is one of the best times to start a startup, period. Because everybody's going to have their stupid startup. And that, like, no matter how awesome you think you are, you're going to create a stupid startup as probably one of your first ones. And like, I wouldn't think of it that way, but like, that's probably what's going to happen. It's probably going to be like a bad idea, some sort of tar pit idea, but you're going to learn so much. And so I would genuinely try and start something. Not go through the motions just to go through the motions, but like genuinely think in your head that this is the thing that's going to work. Because in high school, like your parents are still paying for your house, they're paying for your food. You don't really have any issues. And like high school is not that hard. It really isn't. Like people make it out like it's not going to be that hard. It's not going to be super time consuming. And if it is, like you just need to figure out like better time management, stop scrolling TikTok, and try and just like start a company, which even just like try and start a product, which like solve a problem, build a solution using tech, try and get people to pay for it, and like see how that goes. And then if that goes great. If that doesn't go great, also great. I bet you learned a ton. And so you can just keep on trying. You have just a whole bunch of swings for the next like 5 years, throughout college, where you can just keep on trying new startup ideas. And if any of them take off, dude, you're golden. So I would just start as early as possible.
Yeah. Are there any resources you would recommend that have helped you?
The Y Combinator YouTube videos, honestly. YC and Alex Hormozy. Those guys are great, both of them.
Okay.
And also read The Lean Startup if you're into reading books. Like read The Lean Startup. That will, that will get you set you right.
Mm-hmm. Are there any specific skills that have made a difference for you? They can be hard or like they can be like technical skills or soft skills. Like what are those things that have made a difference?
The biggest thing, and I keep on seeing this, is the ability to communicate, the ability to sell. And like, that's such an X factor that will take you so far. I actually know a handful of YC people here. Like there's obviously a lot of people, MIT, like I met a kid that like he won Putnam. I don't even know if you know Putnam. It's the college math competition.
Okay.
And basically like it's just, you have to be a fucking genius to win it. Like just some of these kids are so incredibly smart. But I think what I see as a bigger predictor of success is the ability to like genuinely communicate well, communicate complex ideas very well, and confidently speak. And that one's really hard to train. That one's really tough. You can't just go on like an online course like you can with learning Python. But that has made me the biggest difference by far in almost every single regard. Like every single aspect, everything is easier when you're better at communicating. And if there's a way you can find to work on that and to improve it, like I pour as much time and energy into doing so.
Yeah. How technical do you think you have to be?
You need to be you need to understand how to build like a full stack app. I will be completely frank, like I am not the most technical person. But the interesting thing is like most CEOs end up not even coding that much anyways. Now it depends, like if you're a dev tools company, it's completely different. But like what the asymptote of being like a CEO or really any founder looks like is like once you get the first 0 to 1 motion, like then you hire engineers, you hire a team, you start managing them. Like then most of your day is spent doing a lot of things And it all kind of reaches to like managing people. And so like that's one thing that YC is looking for. And so I said this in my most recent post, in which like I talked to Ankit, and I said like, how do you famously know in a 10-minute interview who you're going to accept to YC? Like what is it that you're looking for? And he said, realistically, we need 5. We're just looking for 3 things, and it's extremely simple, which is 1, like somebody on the team is extremely technical. They're able to clearly communicate complex ideas, and they're able to go deep, right? And they're able to sell the thing that they're working on. And so like, as long as you have an understanding of how to build a 0 to 1 level product and get people to use it and pay you for it, I would say go ham. It's really great to have someone in the team that's like deeply technical, but like as a CEO, you just need to have an understanding of like how to build something that works for somebody. And I think you'll be pretty fine.
Yeah. If you could go back in time, what are some things you know now that you wish you knew a few years ago?
I think the biggest thing, there's like a lot of things, but like the biggest thing is like more of like a mentality, which is like a lot of people that are not that smart or not that talented or anything like that make millions of dollars every year. And I see this very consistently now, not even in the world of tech, just in general. And so like the bar for being great is actually a lot lower than you probably think. Making $1 million a year is like a goal for a lot of people, and that is extraordinarily achievable. And it's like super first principles. The idea that like you can just make solutions to problems and then get businesses to pay for it. And so I think like the idea that there's some sort of like weird, like amorphous thing that requires you to like make a startup work. Like, I don't know. There's so many unknowns to me. And I wish I just realized like, and saw what I've seen now, which is like, the bar for greatness is a lot more achievable than a lot of people think. And they're a lot more close. And like, if you're smart, you're already like, you've fulfilled the smartness requirement. There's no like magic person or formula or whatever that makes you be able to grow a great company.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any final thoughts or words of encouragement for young founders?
If you're a young founder currently working on a startup, and I know a lot of people that are in like high school and working on something, actually do the thing. Don't go through the motions of doing the thing. Don't do pitch competitions for the sake of doing pitch competitions. Don't go to networking event for the sake of networking event. There's really just two things that you should be doing with all your free time, which is writing code or talking to users, i.e. selling. And that's it. You do that and you'll get somewhere.
Awesome. All right. I think that's it for the podcast. Thank you so much, Ethan.
Super sick. Yeah.